Thank you so much.
Hello again. As president of the American Osteopathic Association, I am thrilled to introduce OMED's opening session speaker, Diana Nyad. In 2013, at the age of 64, Diana Nyad achieved her lifelong dream of swimming from Cuba to Florida, an 110-mile journey that took 53 hours. She became the first person to swim from Havana to Key West without the aid of a shark cage. The feat followed several prior attempts to swim the route since the 1980s, and 3 attempts after she turned 60. Upon finishing, a breathless Nyad said, "I have 3 messages. 1, we should never give up. 2, you are never too old to chase your dreams. And 3, it looks like a solitary sport, but it takes a team." Nyad also broke records in the 1970s by swimming around Manhattan Island and crossing the 102.5 miles between the Bahamas and Florida. She has been inducted into the International Women's Sports Hall of Fame. Take a look at this video.
Diana Nyad started as a competitive swimmer at just 7. By 22, she took a dip and made a huge splash, swimming 28 miles around the island of Manhattan. Soon after, she decided to embark on a much more ambitious journey, swimming more than 100 miles from Cuba to Key West, Florida. But that would become a far more elusive goal.
The Cuba swim is rough. I think I'm capable of making it.
In 1978, she tried and failed and officially retired from swimming on her 30th birthday.
I thought to myself, I will never swim another stroke in my life.
But at the age of 60, Diana shocked the world and returned to conquer the dream that had eluded her for decades.
Now to Diana Nyad, all eyes on the legendary athlete making one more attempt to swim from Cuba to Florida.
Finally, on her 5th attempt, September 2nd, 2013, Diana became the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida without a shark cage.
We should never, ever give up.
After 36 years, she once again emerged from the sea victorious.
You're never too old to chase your dreams.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Diana Nyad.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to my home. We are in what we call the Cuba room. As you can see here, the magical streets of Havana behind me, murals all over this room, my special heart place, Havana, Cuba. And you know why, but we'll get to more of that in a moment. Let me first thank Dr. Clower and all of you for inviting me to be part of your OMED 2020. It's a particular time that I wish I could be with you in person. In part to thank you, to think that you osteopathic physicians are dedicated, committed to your profession and to your patients, your med students, all of you, that even during this time to take that risk of exposure, to be in those ORs, to be in those examining rooms with your patients because you won't let them down. Believe me, it means the world to all of us. It's a challenging time, isn't it? I mean, I noticed that the whole, raison d'etre of your conference this year is envision a path to success, finding a way through these challenges. That's my phrase, find a way. And I don't care how well some of us are doing or how dire some of our lives are. All of our lives have changed over these past 7 months in this country. And I think you would agree with me that it's a time for reflection. It's a time to look at our life values because we're doing things differently. We're home more. I make my living on the road. I've never in my adult life been home for a stretch like this. I've been sitting in a beautiful club chair every day reading a novel, not just reading newspapers and, information sort of entities, but reading a novel, getting back to a value I've always had, reading. I've been cooking. I've never cooked in my life, I'm sad to say. But over these past 7 months, I've learned to at least cook a healthy meal at night, and my partner and I sit down and we enjoy that and watch the news. My dog is old now. If he comes walking by while we're here, I'll introduce you to Teddy, but he's a hound dog who's 15 years old, and I adore him, as we do our animals. And were I living my life as normal, I would be on the road calling the pet sitter to ask if Teddy's failing, just what's happening with his old aging process. But I'm here. I'm walking my own dog. A dog walker isn't walking Teddy. I am, like you probably, looking toward the positives. It's easy to make a long list of the hardships. And I don't know if you know the story of Adrienne Hazlitt. Adrienne is a friend of mine, and her story, briefly, is a few years ago, she lives downtown Boston. It was a Monday. She and her husband, both young people, Adrienne is a ballroom dancer, a ballroom dance teacher. They woke up on a Monday morning and flicked on the news on the television, and it was the day of the Boston Marathon. And they said, come on, we got to have some Boston spirit. Let's throw on our jeans, make a cup of coffee, and get down to the finish line just a few blocks away. They're happy. A lot of runners had already finished. They arrived at the finish line, and on the instant they stepped up to the finish line to start applauding the runners coming across, the first bomb went off. And Adrienne Hazlitt, ballroom dancer, lost her leg. 24 hours later, and I don't need to tell you, the amputation wound up being higher than the injury, as had to happen in the OR. She was in her hospital room, in her hospital bed, for a few minutes when her parents and her husband were out of the room, and she looked down at that empty space that just 24 hours before was her dancer's leg, and she said, I'm not going to take a year. I'm not going to allow myself a few months. I'm not going to allow myself one more hour to focus on what I don't have, what I've lost. I'm going to make a list of what I have. And she found out the list was long. So I've been going through that process. It's been helpful. And I've also been, like many of us, stories of resilience, and that's why I'm with you today, my own story of resilience to share with you, are very big right now. We get something from reading. For instance, I just finished reading Nelson Mandela's autobiography, A Long Road to Freedom, and talk about resilience, 27 years in that jail cell. And the real focus of Nelson Mandela during that long time on Robbins Island in that freezing jail cell, I've been in that cell, maybe you visited there too, was not necessarily how he could get through it. He was focused on what he could do, who he could be, what kind of man he could be if he had enough life in him when he finally got out. So I tend to not focus back on the big Cuba swim. I have to remind myself all the time. I sort of slap myself awake and say to myself, don't let the Cuba swim, as big as it was history. It was a big chunk of a drama of my life. Don't let the Cuba swim be the biggest thing you ever do. And I do allow myself, though, I'll admit to you, every year on the anniversary, and just a couple of weeks ago, we passed the 7th anniversary of the final triumph after many, many years of chasing that dream, arriving on the beach in Key West. I allow myself that day, and many members of the team, there were 45 of us. There was the shark team and the jellyfish team and the navigation team, the medical team, the personal handler team. We convene, whether virtually or in person, on the anniversary every year. And we don't think back on, at least I don't, on the big ego part of it. We did it. Nobody else could do it, and we're the ones who finally, after swimmers trying good swimmers, men, women, strong, fast, since 1950, trying to make it across that passage. In part, athletic challenge. They call it the Mount Everest of the Earth's oceans, the toughest swim on Earth, and in part to connect that forbidden island of Cuba, our close neighbor, to connect us back together again. So it was a big dream, and part of that dream was dreaming so big that perhaps the dream's impossible, or it's probably impossible. Does that make it not worth chasing? It makes it even more worth chasing. For me, the bigger the dream and the bigger chance of failure, the bigger chance I'm going to discover something about myself. And the same for everybody around me in that quest together. I will tell you that I do like to look at the footage that you just saw of our team arriving on that beach. And in part, I like to look at it because it doesn't matter how old I get, I will never look that bad again. But in more serious fashion, I look back to that in total 35 years of chasing that dream, because it wasn't so much, as I said just now about Nelson Mandela, it wasn't so much what I was going to do, or in the end, what I did. It was who I wanted to be. What values did I want to espouse deep down in myself? Like chasing dreams that are so big they might be impossible, having the courage to fail, like a commitment to something, a purpose of something that you are going to be unwavering in pursuing. I want to be that person even though I'm retired from swimming. So I look back constantly at that swim, again, not for the ego, hey, I got to the beach, but for that, who was the person who was gritty enough, who found her true grit to get finally to that other shore, who got knocked down and got back up and got knocked down over and over again, a couple of times in literal near-death situations, but got back and persisted to the other shore. That is the person I want to be. So I've been looking back at that story. Maybe the analogy is a bit like we learn from our past. Are you looking back now at the times when you knew you needed to be resilient and you found that you have that resilience in you? And now's another time to dig down and bring that back up. I guess in a scientific community, the epidemiologists or researchers today of infectious diseases are looking back, 100 years to the Spanish flu, and trying to analyze what they learned from that. How can we learn more about this novel coronavirus? So today I'm going to share that Cuba Swim story with you. Again, re-emphasizing that it's not for me to, sit back and in an armchair and all the rest of my days watch the Cuba Swim. I don't want it to be the biggest thing I do, but I want it to be an emblem of the person I want to be, the person I think I am. So I'm going to take you back to the very beginning, childhood, even early childhood. I had a Greek father who was dramatic. No, he was more than dramatic. He was histrionic. Every day was an emotional exaltation for Aristotle Zenith Nyad. He would wake us kids up, for instance, at 3 o'clock in the morning, tears standing in his eyes, that thick accent of his, the buzzing Z's and the rolling R's, and he would say to us, kids, I have just been to the ocean. It is a Rembrandt painting. It will change your lives. Hurry up. We must go see it. We say, Dad, we have to sleep. We have school in a couple of hours. And his response, I am your father, no? I am here to teach you the lessons of life, no? Lesson number 1, most important lesson you will ever know, sleep is highly overrated. Get up. 20 minutes later, the whole family strolling down at the ocean's edge, the amber moonlight from our ankles out to forever. It was a Rembrandt painting. It changed our lives. Well, when I was 5, actually the day I turned 5, my father called me into the den, and he had Webster's big, fat, unabridged dictionary open. His hands were resting on the pages, tears again standing in his eyes, so we were quite used to that. And he called to me, darling, darling, you are coming here. I have been waiting for this day, for you to turn 5, because, darling, today, I'm going to tell you the most important thing I will ever tell you. Your name. My name. The name of my great people. It is in the bold black and white. The important book, the dictionary. Darling, you will go to your preschool tomorrow, huh? You will ask your little friends, is their name in the dictionary? They will tell you no. You are the only one. Come here, darling. I'm going to read for you. Nyad. In Greek mythology, my people, the nymphs that swam in the lake, river, ocean, and fountain to protect for the gods. Huh? Definition number 2, this is the modern definition. This is the one for you, darling. Nyad, girl or woman, champion, swimmer. Oh my God, darling, this is your destiny. Well, I didn't know what destiny was. I was only 5. But the word I heard that day was champion. And I started walking around with my shoulders just a little bit higher. It wasn't too long after that, elementary school, I had a geography teacher who was an ex-Olympic swimmer. And he said that any kid who came out for the swim team would get an A in geography. I've learned since that a lot of athletes start their careers this way. I was at the pool the next day, and he had everybody swimming up and down. I stopped in this lane over here after some 15 minutes, and the coach was standing over my lane, and he yelled down, hey kid, you, what's your name again? And I yelled up, Nyad, and he said, Nyad, you're going to be the best swimmer in the world if you want to work that hard. Oh, I did. I found I was drawn to the extreme discipline of this sport. 4:30 in the morning, every morning, never an alarm clock needed. 1,000 sit-ups every night, elbow to knee, every one, never 999. By age 9, I was a committed little champion swimmer. Age 9, the Cuban Revolution broke. And literally overnight, thousands of Cubans flooded into my hometown, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We were flying the Cuban flag. We were eating Cuban food. We were dancing salsa in their backyards. And we had a mystique buzzing about that forbidden island right off our shores. My parents had gone dance salsa at the Hotel Nacional, as had JFK and Jackie and the Rat Pack. So we knew all about the magic of the American cars in Cuba and the colonial architecture and the music, all of it, and now it was a forbidden place. And I was on the beach one day with my mother, age 9 I was, and I looked out and I said, Mom, I know Cuba's right out there, but I can't see it. Where is it? And she said, okay, look this way. It's there. It's right there. As a matter of fact, Havana's just across the horizon. It's so close that you little champion swimmer, you could almost swim there. Swim there? A little flutter started kicking in the back of the imagination. Age 12, my father calls me back into that same den, and now he's agitated. He's marching around with his hands behind his back, the veins are sticking up in his neck, and I said, Dad, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with me? I tell you what is wrong with me. I make big mistake when I show you this dictionary. Now you are fanatic. This is every day of the year, 4:30 in the morning, Christmas Day included. We must wait for you to have our Christmas. You are not eating dinner at home. You go to some crazy place they call the training table. You don't know your brother and sister anymore. You don't go to church on Sunday anymore. Your muscles are coming big as a football player. Darling, your hair is green. That's right, Dad. My hair's green. And you know what, Dad? One day, I'm going to stand on the podium at the Olympic Games. I'm going to bow my head for an Olympic medal for the United States of America, Dad. You know why? Because I'm a fanatic. That's how people get ahead in life, Dad. They're fanatics. And you know what, Dad, I'm really glad we had this little talk because I've been meaning to tell you, I don't think you and Mom understand me. For instance, when I say I gotta go to bed at 8:30 because of the early morning call, Dad, I mean everyone in the family must go to bed at 8:30. He said, look, your mother and I, we have been talking. We do. We do understand you, but it's too extreme. Our family cannot live this way anymore. We wish you all the luck in the world. We really do. But today, we are giving you the key to the house. You are on your own. My coach, that same coach who saw me the very first day, became a father figure to me, as many coaches do. Kids on my team, we babysat coach's kids. We would have barbecues over at coach's house on Sunday afternoons. Age 14, there was a big meet statewide in my hometown. I hadn't lost in the 100-meter backstroke in a couple of years at that point. I went over to coach's house to take a nap, as many of us did, in between the daytime prelims and the nighttime finals. And I don't know if it was 3 minutes. Was it 4 minutes? It was quick. It was violent, and it was humiliating. I lost that night. The kids on my team thought I was coming down with the flu or something. We won. Our team won. They were on the other side of the pool deck getting on their sweats, singing our team song. They're about to go out for pizza and Coke, and usually I'd be there, the leader of that action, but not this night. This night, I went down to the bottom of the diving well, 17 feet underwater, and I screamed. I screamed so loud. Had I been above water, you might have heard me from Fort Lauderdale down to Miami. And I screamed, no, this is not going to ruin my life. Me too. The Olympic trials came. I didn't know yet, as a teenager, that my talent as an athlete was going to be swimming long hours and days over the curvature of the earth out in the ocean. As a sprinter, I had a marginal chance just to make it to the elite Olympic trials. I was walking down that pool deck with the weight of the world on my shoulders. First of all, you know how that epidemic goes. The first time is a surprise attack, and then it becomes a punishment and a special thing that you're never supposed to tell anybody. You're confused, and you're silenced, and you're shamed. Me, defiant, strong-willed teenager, silenced and shamed, but silenced and shamed I was. And I was walking down that pool deck with such confusion. Will this be the last night? After 8 years of 4:30 in the morning, 1,000 sit-ups every night, the friendships of my team, and my buddy Suzanne, a butterflyer, her own chances for the Olympic trials. And how were Suzanne and I to know that night? We didn't find out till years later that she also was being sexually molested by that same coach throughout her teenage years. She came and shook me. She said, Diana, you look like you're in a daze. What's wrong with you? This is the most important race of your swimming career. Why aren't you in a sharp focus? And I started in with all the sacrifices. My brother and sister gave up a lot of their dreams because mine were so big. And she said, stop it, stop it. You know it doesn't work that way. You're still in it. This isn't a time for reflection. This is a time to go after it. I tell you what. She said, why don't you get up to those blocks and blast off with the shoulders you've built for 8 years, with the heart that's somehow driven you to do 1,000 sit-ups every night. Why don't you blast off, and when you touch that wall, don't look up at the electronic scoreboard, don't look across the pool, find out where you were at the end, close your eyes, close your fists, and say it. I couldn't have done it a fingernail faster. She said, I guarantee you, you do it that way, you say it and you mean it, you'll have no regrets. Now I had a vision. Don't leave a fingernail's effort in that pool. And I blasted off with my shoulders and my heart. When I touched the wall, I had no idea where I finished. I didn't look up. I closed my eyes. I closed my fists. I said it and I meant it. I couldn't have done it a fingernail faster. And I looked up. I didn't make it. I walked into the locker room and I thought for sure a cascade of tears would fall, but they didn't. I stood there proud because it wasn't just that 100 meters, it was the 8 years. I did it all that way, and I remember as if it were yesterday walking out of that pool deck that night saying to myself, no matter what you do, every day of your life, you do it so you can't do it a fingernail better. No regrets. So life ensued. There was college and graduate school and love and the pursuit of happiness. And there was marathon swimming. In my 20s, which were the decade of the 1970s, I became one of the best ocean swimmers in the world. There was Manhattan Island and Lake Ontario and the Bay of Naples in Italy, swims along the Argentine coast. But always, always, no matter how noble those swims were, and they were tough, it was about Cuba. I had been researching Cuba, what had happened to all these swimmers and why they had not been able to make that crossing. It's a confluence of so many obstacles that are working against you at one time to try to get 2 or 3 continuous days of the Gulf Stream, the most mighty, powerful current of ocean in all of planet Earth, which comes, go back to look at the map. If down here is Cuba, Havana, and due north, about 100 miles, depending on where you can land, is Key West, then that is a northerly swim that you must pursue all the time. You've got to push, push, push north because this Gulf Stream is over here. It emanates right below the Cancun area of Mexico and comes squeezing through the Yucatan Channel. And just above Cuba, if this is the island of Cuba, just above Cuba, it's going due east, and it's going at about 6.6 miles an hour average. And you, as a swimmer, over a long period of time, a couple of days or more, you're averaging 2 miles an hour, so the math is easy. You are being dragged constantly. You need a genius of a mathematical mind of a navigator to help you tack across that current. When you're strong, you're pushing hard. When you're weak, you let it take you a little bit, because every time, not only while you're swimming, do you need a north, 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 unlike other swims where you could take time to look up at the stars and take in the blue jewel of a planet. Not on this one. You've got to push because you're going to be dragged east. And now, every time you take a small break, you need to get in some nutrition, you need to take down some electrolyte drinks, some solid food, you're losing a lot of calories, and you can never take in as much as you're putting out. So you're not allowed to touch the boat. The navigation boat's next to you by about 20 feet over here. Bonnie, my head handler, John, our head navigator, the jellyfish team, the shark team, they all work off this epicenter of a boat called Voyager. It's got a little red light, and I've got fogged over goggles and a tight cap. I can't hear much, but I'm breathing to the left 53 times a minute, seeing that little red light. And when I get the whistle for shark, I know what the protocol is, to draw my feet up as close as I can to my chest and to silently paddle over and get as close to the boat as I'm allowed. There are kayaks with shark devices around me. You're never allowed to touch them. You have independent observers from the world of marathon swimming on the boat to make sure. You never put on fins. You don't wear a wetsuit. You're not touching anything to support yourself. So you can stop anytime you want. You can stop for 3 minutes. You can stretch out your back, move your shoulders around, take a look at the sky, take down your drink as slowly as you want. But the more time you take, you are not going north. You're being dragged east. Now let's say you're in crisis, which you will be. You're going to be seasick out there for a long time. It's a tremendous amount of duress on the body. So there are moments when you're in a state of sensory deprivation and you've forgotten who you are and where you're going. There are all kinds of things that could happen. A storm in the tropics could be coming in with 50-mile-an-hour winds, and the whole team on their different boats are gathering together to make sure they all get downwind of me and make sure that the shark divers are in with me, not allowed to touch me, and swim with me with flares and things until the storm passes. So when the shark is coming, the jellyfish have stung, or the storms are coming, there has to be a quick alertness on my part. And in that, let's say, 17 minutes that the team is planning and getting the protocol together for the crisis, I'm going due east. I'm not swimming north. And pretty soon, this improbable 100 miles that was right here is now out here at 130 miles to Key West. And out farther east becomes even a more improbable tangent. I mentioned the sensory deprivation. Look, I have a tremendous regard for all of Earth's extreme adventurers. The people who run across the Kalahari Desert in 124-degree heat, the people who snowshoe across the continent of Antarctica, all of them have my profound respect. But it's maybe the alpine climbers, and a lot of us feel this way. There's something magical about going up to the top of the world. They really draw me like a magnet. Ed Viestiers is a friend of mine. He's climbed Mount Everest more than any human being the pure way, without bottled oxygen. And Ed says whenever on Annapurna, K2, Mount Everest, he's over 26,000 feet, if he takes a small step, just a few inches forward with his left foot, he is under such duress, his pulmonary system, that he has to stand there and take 25 profound breaths before he's composed enough to take another step of just a few inches. Well, as I say, I'm intrigued by, but completely ignorant about what it's like up at the top of the world. But I am the only one who knows what it's like far, far offshore under your own steam. And the issue for me, unlike climbers and cyclists and runners who deal with other issues, my hardship is sensory deprivation. I'm not seeing well and I'm not hearing well, so very quickly, you're into the interior of your mind. Your childhood is wafting across your brain. You are engaged with the Stephen Hawking sentence you read the night before about the majesty of the universe. And the farther away you go into that interior mind, the less quick you are to react to the shark whistle. So Bonnie encouraged me, and I did put together a playlist of 85 songs. Now, you're not allowed to wear headphones because part of the sport is to have the discipline and the strength of your own mind to get through these isolated hours. But my playlist, which is mostly my generation, of course, it's the Beatles and Bob Dylan and Neil Young and all those brilliant lyricists and singers. I know those songs well, and I use them actually not only to keep myself, aware of what I'm doing still, keep myself in the present so I can react to an emergency, but I use them to actually count time, to count the passage of time. Your stroke is metronomic. After all these years and years and hours of training, and I could count the time just about as precisely as an atomic clock. So if I took a song like Janis Joplin's version of Bobby McGee, and I know it, I hear Janis's voice, I hear the guitars strumming, I hear her breath, and if I take that song and sing it to myself as I'm swimming with a cadence that just matches, that 53 strokes a minute that I need to keep, I will go from the first note of that song to the last. So I'm out at 2 o'clock in the pitch black of night and I'm engaged. I'm not going to lose count. I'm going to sing that song, the entire song, note to note, 1,000 times. And as I'm singing, I'm in it. I never, ever lose count. Busted flat in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train, feeling about as faded as my jeans. Whoa, whoa. All the way to the end, just like Janis. La 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 la, la 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 la. Hey, 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 Bobby McGee, yeah. When I get to 1,000 Bobby McGees, I have passed not a second under or over 9 hours and 45 minutes. My father was right. I'm extreme, and the sport's extreme. The jellyfish. The box jellyfish emits the most potent venom of any animal on earth. Most people who have been touched, it's called the Irukandji syndrome, who have been swept by a tentacle across any part of their skin, die instantaneously. They paralyze your central nervous system. You feel your spinal cord stiffening. They put you into anaphylactic shock. You're having trouble breathing. You're extremely sick to your stomach. You feel like you've been dipped in a vat of hot, burning oil. 2011, I swam into a swarm of them. The tentacles wrapping around the neck, around the bicep, down the back, and I'm screaming out to our shark diver, and I'm screaming out to Bonnie, help me, I'm on fire, help me. And I lived through that night and kept swimming, and swam through the entire next day. Boom! Was stung again the next night at dusk. We happened to be in an area where swarms of them were swimming at dusk. Swam another entire day, but now I'm feeble. I'm not keeping up that strong, powerful stroke that's going to get me all the way to the other shore and not allowing me to be dragged by that easterly current. Now I'm way out east, and we have a talk, and there are some tears and some swear words, and we have to give it up and come back another day. Have I mentioned the sharks at all? So these are the sharks of the tropics. They are the bull sharks closer to shore, and then when you're out there with in the deep, deep waters with no reef, no bait fish for them to feed on, you've got the tigers, the lemons, and especially the oceanic whitetips. And as a general rule, these sharks don't look at the Homo sapien as their food. They're not coming after you. On the other hand, they're curious, so they'll come underneath you and just check out what's happening up on the surface. And on the other hand, if an animal hasn't eaten in a week, 10 days, they will come up through the electronic current. They will come up and take a leg. And how will I ever thank those guys, my shark divers? Yes, we had electronic current running from the bottom of the two kayaks next to me. It's helpful. It's been proven that it's helpful. But the bottom line is that 2 by 2, all through those pitch black nights, because we use no lights. Lights attract fish, lights attract jellyfish, lights attract sharks, so we go pitch black at night unless there's moonlight. And there are 2 divers, a team of 6 of them, under me all night long, and it's exhausting. They're swimming against, underwater current and underwater block of water rather than me gliding across the surface. They're trying to keep up with me at the same time as glancing around, trying to see if the fluorescence of the eyes of the predators are anywhere close by, at the same time of having no fatal gear. They use no spear guns. We kill no animal on our watch. They have these big triangles of PVC piping. And if an animal comes thrashing up anywhere around me, they try to poke him in the nose and move them out and put them behind me in a way and get them curious about them instead of me. As I say, how am I ever going to thank those guys? 1978, 28 years old, I marched down to the shore in Havana. I'm brash, I'm cocky. Jellyfish, sharks, get out of my way. 42 hours later, I was humbled. The sea came up in 8-foot waves. It's another thing about that area, the Florida Straits between Cuba and Florida. You've got the Atlantic gyre, and you've got the Galapagos currents coming through the Gulf of Mexico. You've got currents sweeping around the west end of Cuba, coming up toward you. It's a confluence of air and sea currents that are never dependable. You can get the American Hurricane Center giving you a pretty good forecast. Going to be light winds all from the south or the southeast, southwest, and that can turn on a dime and become an 8-foot sea, which is what happened to us in 1978. Had to give it up, had to come back another day. Trained a full other year for 1979, and with anything you do, medical school, it's all about the training. It's 12 hours one day. You're not in shape yet. You're flat out fried. You lie on the bathroom floor that night in the fetal position. You can't get up to eat dinner, but you do get up the next day and you do 13 hours and you get the body ready and you say to your team on the shore in Havana, I will not be the one to give up. All that team never got paid a cent. All 44 of them. They were in it for the friendship, for history, for the chance of the grandest adventure of our lives. And they took off time from their work, from their families. And I assured them when we got to Cuba that if we didn't make it, it would once again be some force of nature, the universe that was bigger than we were. But it wouldn't be me, who didn't have enough, who hadn't put in the training, who didn't have the heart to stick with whatever pain might come my way. 1979, we never got a chance to go. The wind blew out of the east for 91 days consecutively. Now picture the mighty Gulf Stream is bumping along to the east, and now that wind current is coming from the east, and as the water and wind currents hit each other, there are stiff peaks out there every day, and we missed the entire warm water season when this swim is most possible. What do they say? It's better to try and fail than not try at all. So 1979 was a bust. We're going to face training another year, and we did. 1980, we can't get into Cuba. No American can get a visa to get into Cuba. The State Department on our side cannot help us. Younger people at our team meetings in Key West would raise their hands and say, Diana, you want to do 100 miles in the open ocean, a big world record? Have you seen Guam this time of year? It's absolutely flat as a pancake. It's gorgeous. And I say, but Guam is not in my soul. Cuba is in my soul. It's this particular geography that's drawing me. Not just any 100 miles on planet Earth with, 7/8 of the planet being water. You could do that 100 miles anywhere. I wanted this 100 miles, Havana to the United States. Maybe it's the tragedy of sports. It's the only profession where we must retire young. I was getting offers as an announcer from the wide world of sports. It was time. I was 30. It was time to leave my sport and my beautiful Cuba dream behind. Now, I'm never going to complain about those next 30 years, from age 30 to 60, traveling the world, following the best in the world, the athletes, pursue their excellence, from the U.S. Open Tennis Championships to the Tour de France. And it was inspiring. I of course found it inspiring. I was lucky to make a good living on the road this way. And yet, by 60, after 30 years, I started to feel the malaise of a spectator. I wasn't a doer anymore. I was following other people chasing their dreams. I wasn't chasing my own dreams anymore. Now, I did keep my eye on Cuba during that 30 years, and every time a swimmer tried to make it across, I like to think myself a sporting person. I wasn't wishing them harm or anything, but when they wouldn't make it, I was home doing a little happy dance, like, woo, the dream is somehow still alive, even though I was retired. It was illogical. Turning 60, it wasn't really a matter of the age. It was a matter of the spectator factor. I went digging around in my office for a poem I had read once. I don't know about you. I personally do not understand poetry. I mean, every poem I've ever read in my life, I've sort of grabbed my head by the end and said, why? Why don't they just come out and say it? But this poem had meant something to me, and I knew I needed it. Perhaps you know it. It's Mary Oliver, The Summer's Day. And it was those last two rhetorical, perhaps, lines that gripped me by the short hairs. That month, August 2009, turning 60, I must have read that poem, at least those last two lines, 1,000 times. And this is the way they go. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with this one wild and precious life of yours? I think it was the 1,000th time. I was in my car. I screeched over the side of the road. I looked up in the rearview mirror. I thought, I haven't swum a stroke in 30 years. Would the shoulders come back? Would the will fire up again? But that's what I'm doing with this one wild and precious life. I'm going to chase that Cuba dream, which, as I said before, was never just another notch on the endurance belt. The Cuba swim, for me, was always that necessity of drilling down to every fiber of your potential, to believing that the journey was going to be worth the trip, even if you never made it to your destination of the other shore. And so we started to put it together. The training was tough those first few months after all that time off. Bonnie, John Bartlett, we put it together, and we tried and we failed. Trained another year, and we tried and we failed again. Trained again. And now this will be the fourth time overall that I've tried, if you count back 1978, and we fail again. And now the whole world calls this event 100% impossible. Dr. Timothy Noakes, arguably one of the top sports scientists in the world from University of South Africa, we had learned a great deal from Tim. For instance, Bonnie was taught by Tim to make a big vat of pre-cooked hot pasta, just plain pasta. Because what happens is you're taking down as much of these, compressed goos and gels of high-level protein and calories as you can. But all that stuff, because you're trying to digest in the supine position this way, goes down, much of it, into empty spaces, like people lying in hospital beds in that horizontal position. And Tim thought that if we put a coating of that pasta first and directly put the goos and the gels on top of it, we'd have more of a chance of my system and muscular contraction receiving the benefit of the goos and the gels. And now Tim writes me a kind of a Dear John letter. And by the way, Bonnie tells me, because I'd swim to the side of the boat, not allowed to touch it again, and I'd tread water, and Bonnie would reach in and take a handful of rigatoni, and I'd open my mouth this way, and she'd just drop a few handfuls in, followed by the goos and gels. Bonnie says that if we don't do well these days, there's always an act ready for us at SeaWorld. Anyway, Tim writes me this kind of Dear John letter, and he says, listen, those of us down here at the university, we're big fans of yours and your team. You're proving that, never give up is a value that we should all follow. It's something to behold, but I'm telling you, I'm sending you today because now I've had a chance to follow you on these attempts. I've developed more of the sort of math of what it's going to take to get across, and I'm sending you all the charts today, all the empirical data. And what that data says is that no swimmer of any gender, any age, any era is ever going to make this crossing. You know why? You have to north. You're going to run out of glycogen. There's not enough rest time, and there's too long a prolonged period before you run out of body fuel. You are going to be unconscious before you make it to the other side. And the same was true of everybody. We had a talented documentary film unit following us all these years. Sanjay Gupta from CNN and his documentary people had been following us. Other people had come down to do stories on us. The New York Times, they found the story of a 60-plus-year-old woman chasing this dream, perhaps inspiring. And now they all dropped out. They all wished us luck. But Sanjay Gupta, for instance, said, Diana, we don't have the resources to go out and follow you year after year after year, and we'll tell you the truth, we don't believe you're ever going to make it across. I tell you what, if you do, if you ever somehow make it to Key West, we'll be there waiting for you. Well, I called Sanjay Gupta and Timothy Noakes and all of them, and I said, listen, we've had so much respect from all of you in following us all this time. We've learned a lot from you all. We've appreciated it. But I'm going to tell you right now, the success of this quest has nothing to do with glycogen deprivation. The success of this quest is all about the power of the human spirit. We're still believers, and one day I will make it all the way from Cuba to Florida. So we put it together for a fifth time. We get the weather call. It looks doable. It looks pretty good. 2013, August 31st, the whole team, all 45 of us are in Key West. We're sequestered and we're leaving for Havana at dawn. I can't sleep. I'm excited, I'm confident, and I admit to you, I was scared. I thought, will this be the time I die out there? Will the team stick with me if I don't make it again? How many years are they going to take off from their lives to pursue this dream? I couldn't sleep. I went wandering the streets of Key West in the middle of the night. I went into an all-night drugstore. There was only one other shopper in there. He was Cuban, and he knew my story. And in the middle of the night in that Key West drugstore, he told me his story. He said he was 7 when his family left Cuba in the middle of the night on a dilapidated raft. Already, they have called that stretch the Cuban graveyard. We'll never know how many Cubans are at the bottom of that ocean who, leaving for freedom in the middle of the night on dilapidated rafts, never did make it across. Some of his family members, certainly friends in Havana, had that tragedy happen to them. And now he's down on a wind-whipping night looking at this half-inflated raft that his whole family's going to get into. And he is the youngest. He's scared to death. And his grandmother comes down, he says. And she pulls him off to the side and she says, "Mi querido, I'm not going to go. This is my country. I'm too old. But listen to me. An American once gave me this $2 bill. They say it means good luck over there. We're going to zip it into your jacket. It's going to help you survive this treacherous crossing. It's going to help you make a new life in America. And mi querido, it could be that you and I will never see each other again. But you remember, one day, you must give this $2 bill to somebody else who could really use some good luck." And on that night, that middle of the night in that Key West drugstore, that Cuban gave me his $2 bill for me to carry all the way across for my own luck. Sort of the ultimate token of the Cuban-American friendship. It's the 5th time. I'm on the shore looking out at that horizon, and it looks farther away than it's ever looked before. We know too well what's out there now. Bonnie comes, grabs my shoulders, and she says, "Let's find a way." And I took the leap. That first day was glorious. I'm singing my Janis Joplin songs. John Bartlett's coming out of the navigation cabin on the boat next to us with his thumbs up all day. He likes the axis of the Gulf Stream. He likes the low wave action. He likes the tidal flow. We never had that for 1 minute on any of the other swims. 51 hours this one, 48 hours that one. All day, John Bartlett, our navigator, is happy. And that night was hell on earth. I was wearing a new suit of jellyfish gear, all approved by the sport, with surgeon's gloves, difficult to swim with, little surgeon's booties, hard to swim with, a silicone mask that was fabricated for me after many attempts at prototypes to try to protect my lips and protect the entire face from tentacles sweeping across. It was gear that was difficult to swim in, and the wind came up that night. It was no longer calm, and I was getting walls of seawater hitting against this thin opening of this mask. I was swallowing those walls, and I was vomiting into the mask, and now your tensile strength is weak. Your fingertips are numb, and your team can't help you. It's against the rules. You've got to reach and try to find the edge of that silicone to pull up the mask and clean it all out, get it back on. The next day, Bonnie and her team, instead of signaling me over to the boat every 90 minutes to take that real quick, feeding and peeing, whatever you need to do, and keep getting north, was calling me over every 45 minutes and making it even shorter than usual because I had lost so much. I had lost so many calories, lost so much fluid the night before, and as we came into the second night, seems impossible to believe, it was more hellish than that first night. Now I'm cold when I come over to stop for a feeding or we have to deal with something and I'm not producing a metabolic rate in swimming. I'm shivering. I'm forgetting who I am. For a while, I got fixated on these little men marching beneath me, and I was upset because I thought they were the Cubans. They were the Cubans who didn't make it across. And I kept stopping. I wasn't swimming north at all. I'm getting dragged east while I'm engaged in these little marching men way down at the ocean floor, and Bonnie's whistling and yelling out, "You've got to swim, Diana, come on. Come on, we've come too far. Press, put your arms up, let's go." And I yelled out, "Bonnie, okay, I'm gonna get back to swimming, but just tell me if you see the little men marching on the ocean floor here. Is it the Cubans? I'm upset about it." And she said, she was respectful. She looked, she peered over and took a good look underneath. And she said, "Okay, let me tell you something. It's not to worry about. Those are not the Cubans. Those are the 7 dwarves. And you know the great thing about them? They're going right where you're going, so just follow them for a while." Okay, she got me. She got into my fantasy rather than talking me back into reality, which always works out there, and I started following them. I started remembering their names, Grumpy, Sneezy, Doc. I started putting my cadence of my stroke in with the cadence of their marching. And I breathed to the left, so as my right ear dips down, I could hear them. They were chatting, and they were singing, and they were whistling. Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's off to work we go. I was hanging on by a thread. I forgot who I was, why we were out there. Bonnie blew the whistle loud for shark. I drew my legs up on automatic impulse. I snapped out of my reverie, and she yelled out, "It's important. Diana, look ahead and tell me what you see." I looked up and I said, "Bonnie, my vision is shot. It's a canvas of black. It's a black ocean, black sky. I don't see anything." She said, "Come on, it's important. I told you, feather up. What do you see?" I said, okay. I tried hard. I feathered up. Wait a second. There's a white filament of light right across like the horizon area here. I said, "It's the sun. The 3rd day is upon us. You know how the sun works. It gives you hope." And Bonnie is not a crier, was on the edge of tears. And she said, "It's better than the sun. Those are the lights of Key West." And there they were. After all those years, somehow, illogically, believing that we would be the expedition that made it all the way across, that made history, and got to the lights of Key West. There they were. Actually, they weren't quite right there, because sound and light both are distorted over water, and especially at night. And it turned out we had 15 more continuous hours to swim. We were only somewhere short of 3/4 of the way across. But now hope was alive. Now I knew the end game was, even if it was far, it was in sight, and we all got back to work. The jellyfish team, the shark team, the handler team, the navigation team, and me. A couple of hours from shore, bright blue skies now, middle of the day, palm trees sort of visible to me in the distance. I asked Bonnie and John Bartlett to bring our crew, all 44 of them in their boats, around in a semicircle close by. My mouth was deeply lacerated because of the retainer from the mask. I had trouble speaking. I was very swollen also. But I said to them, "Look, I guess I'm going to stumble up on that shore pretty soon. I guess somebody's going to take my picture. But don't you ever forget my team. We did this together." So as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we just passed the 7th anniversary of that swim. And what I am hearkening back to now, again, is not that big moment on the beach. It's, who was I? Who was the person who had the grit, who had the never, ever give up attitude? Who is the person who, at age 71 today, has plenty of vitality left and wants to live out that never say die attitude for the rest of my days? And now I'm not engaged so much anymore in individual pursuits. I do have some. I'm writing a new book. I've got other things going on. But as we get older, your vision goes out toward the world more. I've started with Bonnie, a national walking initiative called Everwalk. We started something called the Everwalk Mile, hoping that every American, just like brushing our teeth, walks a mile every day. It started in COVID times. Get out. It's the one thing you can do. Wear a mask, get out, say hi to your neighbors. Walk a mile every day. I've also started an initiative called Oceans Commit. We're going to do long walks along ocean shores with a mile swim involved if people want to swim. And the whole point will be to commit ourselves to reducing single-use plastic. Because of the sexual abuse I went through, I want to become part of, with the notorious RBG as a light guiding us all, part of curtailing sexual abuse against women in our country. Every morning these days, I get up at dawn and I get into my gym. And the first thing I do is turn on my neon sign. And all through that 2-hour badass workout, I glance over at this word, persist. That's the value. That's the value I want, is persist in your dreams, persist in your perhaps impossible dreams. And again, to get back to you guys, envision a path to success. Why not just start with that word, persist? Whatever that dream is, go, 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 get knocked down, go, go, go again. And the last thing I want to leave you with is, at dawn, when I get in my gym, much to my neighbor's distress, I play my song, which is Reveille. I used to play it every day before training. I played it all 5 times on the shore in Havana because it signals to people the world round, doesn't it, Reveille? Get up. Don't miss a moment of your life. Don't miss a moment of this wild and precious life of yours. So today, for you osteopathic doctors, for all of you at the OMED conference, I play it for you. Find a way. Thank you for having me.
Wow, what an incredible session. Thank you so much to Diana Nyad for sharing her amazing journey. We hope you're all feeling inspired. Now, before you head off to your CME sessions, a reminder that the Hope for Headaches Symposium is taking place tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. So grab your coffee for this 1-hour session discussing new therapies that are changing the treatment of migraine and cluster headaches. Also, while you're at OMED, please consider supporting the Student Osteopathic Medical Association Foundation. The SOMA Foundation strives to advance the profession by supporting the education and professional development of osteopathic medical students. With your support, the SOMA Foundation provides scholarships and grants to help students serve our communities and mature as physicians of tomorrow. Please visit somafoundation.org/donate to learn more. And don't forget, click on the schedule icon on the homepage or on the navigation panel to access your CME and educational content. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow.